Nigerians want to know if voters will be allowed to go with their phones to the polling booths where they will thumbprint the ballot papers. They said it's very important because of what happened in Ekiti and Osun states where there were allegations of vote buying and others.
Whether they'll be allowed to use their phones in the
yes.
polling booths.
Would they be allowed, will phones be allowed?
Noted. Any other question?
Secondly, what is, as it stands now, the position of Zamfara and River States in the forthcoming elections?
Position of?
The position of INEC, Zamfara States and Rivers.
Be specific, please.
Let him say it again.
Number 2.
My name is Roman Usugu. I'm still writing for the Sun newspaper. Professor, I hope there is no distraction, sir.
Proceed, go on.
Okay, sir. Yesterday, when you were addressing us, you assured that you are not under any form of pressure. We pocketed that, sir. But, sir, if you look at the body language of especially the ruling party, it's becoming obvious that they can only accept results when it favors them. We have also had speculations that you may not, you're calling for your sack, sir. My question, sir, how certain are you of conducting this election, sir? How certain are you that you conduct this election? Thank you, sir.
Number 3, please. Thank you.
Aaron Ross from Reuters. 2 quick questions for the chairman. The first is, will there be another postponement to the vote? And the second is, have you considered resigning after the president said that you were...
Consider resigning. And the first one was... There will be another postponement. Thank you. Number 4, please.
My name is Abdul Yusuf from Liberty TV. I'm still more particular about the Port Harcourt issue. We're all aware that the Supreme Court struck out a motion filed by Senator Abe against the stay of execution made by 2 appeal courts.
Can you use the mic, please? Draw the mic closer to your mouth, please.
Anyway, my question is, since the court has not invalidated this appeal, why is INEC in a haste to... Well, let me just ask this one. Should INEC obey an order of court in which the commission was not a party?
Sorry, I don't know that John got your question. I didn't get your question. Can you use the mic, please? Draw it closer to your mouth. Just to the point, what is the question?
My question is, should INEC obey an order of court in which the commission was not a party?
Okay, sure. Oh, great. Should INEC obey a court order in a case in which it was not a party?
Okay, my name is LM Chukwemeka. I report for Ben TV. Today, I was in INEC office in FCT. I noticed that some materials are being moved to area council. I want the commission to update us on the state, to update us on what they are doing in other states, whether the materials has gone to, has been distributed to local governments.
Number 5, please. Next, number 5.
Good afternoon, sir. My name is Ahmed Hassan Ahmed.
Use the mic, please.
Right, good afternoon, sir. I am Ahmed Hassan Ahmed, and I report for DITV and Al-Hiri Radio. I am particular about the case of Rivers, the APC case, of course, which we understand that INEC said it relies on a certain Supreme Court judgment. But based on our findings, there is no judgment from the Supreme Court. And if there is any, can you avail us as pressmen a copy of such judgment? Thank you.
Number 6, please.
Mr. Chairman, My name is Latif Ibrahim. I write for People's Daily newspaper. In very categorical terms, sir, I want you to tell the Nigerians and the whole world, what role will the military play the forthcoming election? At what point will their role start and where will it stop? Secondly, there was a report in one of the newspapers yesterday that sensitive electoral materials made for Kano State were discovered in Ibadan, Oyo State. So what's the Commission's reaction to this? Thank you.
I think the last one.
Sorry. Honorable Chairman, my name is Jonathan Ipa. I still labor for Al Jazeera newspaper. Yeah, he has captured part of my question, but the second one is that materials meant for Kano were found in Uyo, while that of Lagos were found in Kwara State. We need clarification.
Sorry, what was found?
Secondly.
Sorry, what was found?
Pardon?
What was found?
Sensitive materials.
Sensitive materials, thank you. Thank you.
The second question is, as we talk, Nigerians at the various bus stops prepared to travel as usual to exercise their voting rights. But they will also want to get some extra assurance from you. Do you have any reason to suspect some sabotage from any of the federal government agencies assisting you in the distribution of this material ahead of Saturday's election? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Perhaps we can answer those questions, and then if there are any more, we'll take them. Chairman, sir.
Well, thank you very much. A couple of questions and comments, starting with Friday from the Punch. He asked, demanded to know if voters will carry their phones to the polling units on election day. Recall that when the Commission introduced the partial ban on the use of mobile phones, we said that it wasn't a blanket ban. It was introduced essentially in order to address the use of smartphones for the facilitation of vote buying, beginning with the Osun governorship election, and we said we are going to extend same to the general election and all subsequent elections from September last year. Yes, citizens are free to carry their phones, and they are free to also use their phones in the vicinity of the polling units. After all, we said the result for each polling unit will be recorded on Form EC60E and will be pasted at each polling unit, and citizens are free to use their mobile phones to take a picture of the result, which will further give assurance of the transparency of the process from the beginning, or from the conclusion of voting at polling units to the declaration of results. And those who have their own method of PVT, parallel vote tabulation, or if they're agents of political parties, they have their own situation rooms, they can easily begin to tabulate, with the proviso that at the end of the day, even if you tabulate, there is only one source for the announcement of result, and that is the Independent National Electoral Commission. But we thought it's an assurance and confidence building mechanism. What we have done is to prevent the use of mobile phones from the point the voter is accredited to the time he or she gets into the voting cubicles, makes his or her choice, and drops the ballot papers into the ballot boxes. In the case of the Saturday election, there will be 3 ballot boxes for the 3 different types of elections. So yes, you are free to carry your mobile phones in the general vicinity of the polling units, but no citizen should carry his or her mobile phones into the voting cubicles. This is the clarification that we have made before the Osun elections, and I want to reiterate that it's not a blanket ban on the use of mobile phones. It's just between the point the voter is accredited and the point he or she drops the ballot papers into the ballot boxes. Zamfara and Rivers, what is the position of the Commission? The position of the Commission remains the position we announced before now, that the parties in question, by court order and by our understanding and interpretation of the judgments of 2 courts of coordinate jurisdiction delivered same day in the case of Zamfara, cannot field candidates in the 2019 general elections for the National Assembly, governorship, and state assembly elections. That does not include the presidential election. And the position of the Commission has not changed. Once courts of law make pronouncements, all persons and authorities in the Federal Republic of Nigeria are duty-bound to obey. But if the judgment is from the Supreme Court, that is the end to litigation. The Sun newspaper. Am I under pressure? I said so yesterday that I am not under any pressure. How certain am I that I will conduct the elections? Well, the last time I checked, and that is the situation as we speak, I am the chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission, Nigeria, and constitutionally, the Chief Electoral Commissioner of the Federal Republic, a returning officer for the presidential election. So my status hasn't changed, and I'm proceeding on the basis of those powers I draw from the Constitution for this position that I'm privileged to serve for the 2019 general elections. I hope that answers the question. Will there be another postponement? Will I consider resigning? Well, I see no reason to even contemplate resigning. There is no reason whatsoever to even contemplate resigning. We'll stay focused as a commission. We'll do the job that is there for us to do for our country. Yusuf from Liberty TV. Should the commission obey a court order in which the commission is not a party? And is there an order of the Supreme Court? If there is, you would also like to know that order. There is an order of the Supreme Court. Once the court in this country issues an order, whether you agree with that order or not, you are duty-bound to obey it. That is a constitutional provision. So it's not a matter of choice, unless that order is made by a lower court and is vacated by a superior court on appeal. Or if that order is by the Supreme Court, then that is the end to litigation. There is no further appeal. We believe that in the case of Rivers, we are following the legitimate orders of court. But if anybody disagrees with the position taken by the commission, the best thing to do is to go to a superior court and seek to vacate the orders. But if it is by the apex court, that is unfortunately for litigants the end to litigation. The judiciary will always say, there must be an end to litigation. Movement of materials in states, update. I think I've given the updates. 19 states, as at this afternoon, early afternoon, are fully deployed to the local governments. All other states will complete deployment today. There is only one state, Bayelsa, which will move not to the local governments. They are moving direct from our state office in Yenagoa to the registration area centers. The process of movement of material is such that you take delivery from the central bank, you move the materials to the local governments, you batch the materials by wards, you move the materials to wards, and from the wards to the polling units. And there are fixed days for this kind of movement, going by the tradition of the commission. Materials are supposed to arrive all the local governments on a Thursday and today is a Thursday, all local governments, all state offices will deploy to the local governments. But from the local governments, we deploy on a Friday to the registration area centers. And at first light on Saturday, we deploy materials to the polling units. And that has been the tradition, and we are maintaining that sequence and pattern of deployment. Ahmed Hassan, DITV, Rivers. Oh, you are the person who asked if there is a judgment of the Supreme Court, and can INEC avail a copy of the judgment of the Supreme Court on the matter, if any. As far as I'm aware, and I should be because we have been served, there are 3 judgments of the Supreme Court. As to whether you want to see a copy or not, I'm sure the Legal Services Department of INEC will be very happy to avail you of the certified true copies of the judgments. We just cannot take a decision without the orders of court. We can't cook things up. We are a law-abiding institution and a law-abiding commission. And for a senior journalist, I guess, like you should have no difficulty actually obtaining copies of these judgments. Latif from People's Daily. What role should the military play? Well, the lead agency in election security is the Nigeria Police. It is the Nigeria Police, depending on the issues involved, that will request for assistance from other security agencies, including the military. And the standard operating procedure is that the military will not be involved in the polling units. They will not be involved in the immediate inner cordon, but depending on the invitation they receive from the police, they may play the kind of role assigned to them by the lead agency in election security, that is the Nigeria Police. So INEC works with the Nigeria Police as the lead agency, and based on assessment of threat and the level of assistance that the police requires, it can then call on other security agencies, including the military. Sensitive materials meant for Kano found elsewhere. I answered this question yesterday. For a deployment of this nature, it's possible for a parcel meant for one state to be mistakenly delivered to another state. Remember, the movement of materials to states is handled by the Central Bank of Nigeria. Once any parcel belonging to any state is discovered elsewhere, it is handed over back to the Central Bank, and it's the Central Bank that delivers these parcels to the relevant states. Yeah, it has happened in Katsina, for instance, a parcel for the FCT was found, it was promptly returned. So any parcel belonging to any state, stray parcel, will be returned to the state. But I must say that such incidents are far between. And if you look at the quantum of what we have delivered to the states, they are actually statistically insignificant. On Saturday, I told the nation that on ballot papers alone for the 2019 general elections, the Commission printed 421.7 million ballot papers. The result sheets for the presidential election alone is 13.6 million leaves. So in an operation of this nature, this kind of thing is bound to happen. It has always happened. In previous elections, you probably did not notice. But we have always had this kind of situation, and we have always made up. But wherever a parcel that does not belong to a particular place is discovered, it is returned back to the central bank, and the central bank promptly delivers to the relevant or appropriate state. Jonathan, Al Jazeera is more or less the same question. He also referred to Kano, and he talked about extra assurances that elections will hold, and if there is any evidence of sabotage. I wish to say that I have any evidence that the commission has been sabotaged. It's the sheer logistics of it, and I explained the reasons that happened on Saturday. So there is no feeling in the commission of sabotage. And I want to reassure you that elections will hold on Saturday. And don't just rely on my assurance and reassurance. Look at the activity happening in the states. You have your colleagues all over the country. Just ask them the level of movement of material, the level of engagement of staff, the level of engagement of transporters to move personnel to various locations is such that the nation clearly is in the mood to conduct the elections on Saturday. Then finally, there are two questions I was asked. One, will there be another postponement? Is related to the question I answered. No, there won't be another postponement. The Commission does not envisage there to be a postponement of the election on Saturday or the election scheduled for Saturday, the 9th of March, for which we have been making preparations. Will I consider resigning? I answered this question. I see no reason why I should resign. I hope I've answered all the questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairman. Perhaps we can take another round of a few questions. Number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That'll be it. Thank you. Number 1, please, quickly.
Good afternoon, sir. Abayami Akimbola is my name. I report for Cool FM, Wazobia, Nigeria Info. Sir, in previous meetings, you said that the card readers have been programmed in such a way that on the election days, they will start work at 8 a.m. and stop at 10 p.m. My worry is elections, as in votings, are expected to stop at 2 p.m. Then why is the card reader still working till 10 p.m.? Thank you.
Thank you. Number 2, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Emeka Nze. I work for Blueprint. Honorable Chairman, sir, I want to find out the number of petitions you have received since the postponement. I'm asking against the backdrop that somebody from Kogi State, a candidate, Kogi Central, was complaining that certain materials were leaked somewhere, found in a particular candidate's house. And she said she was going to forward a petition to INEC and to find out whether that sensitive material was original or fake. My question is that material, or have you been intimated of that material? Is it fake or the original? Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Number 3.
Chairman, good afternoon. My name is Terry from Channels TV. The Commission has made provision for 180,000 card readers as against the 176,000 polling units. And the Commission has also said that in the event of a huge turnout in a particular polling unit, those units will be broken down into other smaller units to enable voting. Considering the deficit of 4,000, how do you hope to achieve success with the card readers at that level? My second question would be that there are reports of shortage of staff of INEC in about 13 states or thereabout. What's the Commission doing in this regard?
Thank you. Number 4.
Thank you. My name is Vin Olich, I report for Voice of Nigeria. There have been this trending information on the social media that some politicians have already hacked into the INEC database with the aim of rigging the election. And it was actually dictated by your IT department. Can you clear Nigerians on that, sir?
Thank you. Number 5, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. My name is Ijeoma Osamo from Africa Independent Television, AIT. My question is about the request by some political parties in Akwa Ibom State and even the national chairman of the All Progressives Congress for you to redeploy some resident electoral commissioners. I want to find out from the commission today, are you thinking or is the commission contemplating on redeploying Mr. Mike Igini from Akwa Ibom? Because there was a protest there yesterday and even this morning. Number two, yesterday, a high court in Abuja ruled that the former governor of Delta State is no more a candidate. I do not know the position of the commission, and I'm asking if the commission will also allow his name to be on the ballot. Thank you.
Thank you. Number 6, please.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. My question is, I'm Al-Hassan Bala, I work with ITV, Abuja. The first one is, in the statistic you gave, is there any percentage of people found guilty of double registration? Second, any ban on people raising their already cast ballot papers, as we've seen in 2015 in some part of northern Nigeria, regards to the issue of partial ban of phones? And the third, as alleged by a presidential candidate of an opposition, is there any plan to delay election in 3 northern states? Thank you.
Thank you. Number 7, please.
My name is Abiodun Ajijola, an observer with Election Monitor. First question, sir, is on the... Sure. You've given us the figures, and thank you for doing so. We observed that there's been about, from 2015, 5% increase in the cards that have been collected, eligible voters, which is very commendable. That's about 60 million people. Sir, we also observed that we have increased the number of uncollected PVCs, which is now 11.2 million. Going forward, what is the long-term strategy the Commission wants to deploy to ensure that we reduce this figure or eliminate it completely? Secondly, sir, this is a follow-up to my question yesterday about the card reader. When I asked about if there's disruption, and you said it would happen the election will be conducted again in the polling units the next day, but subject to the fact that there is a difference between I think the difference between the 2 leading parties is less than the number of voters, I think, affected by the cancellation. So my question is this: for a presidential election, if I got that right, for a presidential election where the constituency is the whole country, will you wait until the results have come in from the whole nation to determine the gap, and then through that know the areas, if needed, if need be, where you will use, where card readers' failure would now come into effect? Or would you do it at lower levels like LGA, ward, and state? Last question, sir, is that for many of us, we believe that to run an election effectively, you need fund on time. And many of us understand the challenge with funding this very election. And for me, I think INEC has done a great job with the resources and the time the resources came. Sir, this has happened before. It's not the first time we've had delay in funding of elections. Sir, what do you think, as the chairman of the commission and the commission can do going forward to ensure that funding of election is not is not subject to the whims and caprices of political actors who are in government at the federal level, as executive or National Assembly level? And lastly, sir, we've seen your new website, and congratulations, it's a wonderful one.
Thank you very much. Number 8, please.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. My name is Somna Shagari Sambu, New Central Television. Just 2 quick questions. The first one is that the federal government of Nigeria has of recent become agitated with a fear that is unknown to many Nigerians. It has been saying that there may be a foreign interference in this election. We have seen lots of top government officials warning the Western powers and all of that. What is this fear that is being expressed by the Nigerian government that INEC has not been able to inform Nigerians about? And is there any need for Nigerians to also worry alongside its government on the fears being expressed that there may be foreign interference in this election? And then secondly, can you confirm, Mr. Chairman, that 13 of your vehicles were burnt down in a community called Obot Akara in Ikotekpene in Akwa Ibom State? Thank you so much.
Thank you. And the final one, number 9, please.
Chair, good afternoon. My name is Austin Agbe. I work for the Center for Democracy and Development. My question is around election security. A few minutes ago, Mr. Chair, you made mention that the police is the lead agency for election security, and Section 29, subsection 3 of the Electoral Act put election security under the control of the Independent National Electoral Commission. Will you adhere to the session, that's section 29, subsection 3 of the Electoral Act, that puts the control of election security under your command? Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I think with that, we've ended the second round of questions. Perhaps Honorable Chairman will wish to respond to all 9 questions and sub-questions asked. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. Uzi Abayomi from Cool FM. The programming or configuration of the smart card readers, such that the card readers work between 8 in the morning on election day and 10 p.m. Then you question the rationale of the card readers working until 10 p.m. simply because the polling units are supposed to close at 2 p.m. I want to make this important clarification because I've been asked the question before that the period of voting in Nigerian elections is too short, 8 to 2. And therefore, if polling units close at 2, why should the card readers remain operable until 10 p.m.? Actually, the voting period in Nigeria is not strictly 8 to 2. Commencement is at 8 a.m. But remember, you allow citizens to vote for as long as they are on the queue before 2 p.m. So that if you have accredited voters or voters queuing up to vote on the queue after 2 p.m., you don't send them home. They are allowed to vote no matter how long it takes. And you also have to make allowance for the possibility, in spite of the best efforts of the Commission, to commence voting at 8. If you don't commence voting at 8, what happens? And if there is a very large turnout of voters and the voting goes well beyond 2 because voters are on the queue, what do you do? So that is why there is this extension up to 10 p.m. After 10 p.m., the smart card reader will automatically shut itself down. So it's not true that voting ends at 2. Voting ends when the last person on the queue has voted, even if it means voting beyond 2 p.m. But there is no polling unit, even if you have 100% voter turnout, that we envisage voting will go up from 8 to 10. So there is that flexibility simply for the reason that I've explained. It's not that voting stops at 2. Voting goes on until the last person on the queue has voted, provided that that person is on the queue before 2 p.m. Extra assurances, again from you. No, I think that's all from you. Abayomi, then Emekanze. Number of petitions we have received since the postponement. Well, I have not segregated the number of petitions received since postponement. It is in the nature of things in INEC that you always have court orders, petitions, protests, demonstrations. Nigerians have the right to demonstrate. Nigerians have the right to criticize. And we enjoy criticisms because there can't be progress for any institution or any nation without criticisms. There can't be new knowledge without criticisms. And as a result of the criticisms and the way we have responded to criticisms, I'm sure many Nigerians will be convinced that INEC has been the most improved public service institution in Nigeria, at least since 2010. So I can't say the number of petitions or protests that we have received. But if you ask me for the number of court papers we have been served processes since the conclusion of party primaries on the conduct of congresses and primaries of political parties alone, at the last count, which was 2 weeks ago, it was 640 cases. We had 584 requests for certified true copies of judgments. and we had 186 petitions, protests, and complaints. But these are all over the conduct of congresses and primaries of political parties. Then you talked about what I saw on the social media trending, the allegation that some of our sensitive materials for a particular senatorial zone in Kogi State found its way somewhere, and somebody has been complaining about. I must say that yes, I heard about it. I must also confirm to you that the complainant met me this afternoon. We are a public service institution. We listen to citizens when they have cause to complain. The person was in the office this afternoon. I was not presented any evidence of the material allegedly found elsewhere from the Commission's collection. I have not been presented any such evidence, but the person confirmed to me that a petition or complaint or protest has been lodged with the security agencies. That is the best place to investigate this kind of infractions or violations. But I asked the person as a candidate in the senatorial election in one of the senatorial districts in Kogi State, if that person as a candidate had polling agents. And it was confirmed to me that the person indeed had polling agents. At the time the person visited, our officials were at the central bank with agents of all political parties taking stock of all materials for the Kogi election. And I requested that person to call the polling agent and confirm what was happening in Kogi. In my presence, the person called the polling agent. And the polling agent confirmed that he was there, he was a witness to the processes of the commission, and that he had no complaint at that point in time whatsoever. As for whatever material is making the rounds on the social media, since that matter has been forwarded to the security agencies, we should let the security agencies to investigate. We are equally interested in the outcome of the investigation by the security agencies. But I want to assure you that it is not easy to actually clone the materials used by the Commission for Elections. We have always operated on the understanding that there may well be people who would like to clone our materials and produce counterfeit of same. That is why we have ample security features on our sensitive materials. And on top of that, there is a stamp that validates particularly the ballot paper on election day. Without that stamp, the ballot paper is invalid. So we have ample security protocols for securing sensitive materials on election day. But we are looking forward to the investigation by the security agencies. If they request us to make comments, we'll make comments. But please understand that at this point and here and now, I can't comment on the security features any further on our election materials. But I want to tell you that in addition to the built-in security features, because the ballot papers are designed by the Commission, there is a secret code known only to those who print and the chairman of the Commission. And it cannot be seen with the naked eye. You need special magnifying glasses to read the special security codes. So I want to assure you that the sensitive materials that we use for election are truly, truly fortified from just anybody trying to clone. So once the security agencies approach the Commission requesting us to confirm or what, then we'll do the detailed analysis and make this available to the security agencies. But our materials are safe. In the case of that election, which is a senatorial district, no material had left the Central Bank of Nigeria. Even when some states had deployed on Friday for the election last week, Saturday, the ballot papers for the senatorial districts in Kogi State were not actually deployed out of the vaults of the Central Bank. So our materials are safe. But as I said, we look forward to the investigation by the security agencies. And I hope at the end of the day, all those who thought that they could beat the system by perpetuating this illegality will be fished out and dealt with. Terry, Channels Television. Breakdown of the smart card readers by PUs and voting points. Well, voting points are not created arbitrarily in the middle of an election. Let's say, let us deploy the smart card readers at that point. They are clearly determined ahead of the elections. We have determined the number of voting points. We have determined the number of parent units, which is fixed, 119,973. Smart card readers have been configured to those specific polling units, and we have deployed them. And there is a cushion for us as a commission in case some extra spare card readers are required, or what we call redundancies. So in terms of the number of smart card readers to cover all the polling units and voting points, the commission is comfortable. And then we have spare capacity in case we need to deploy more. And Terry, you referred to shortage of staff in 13 states. The commission is unaware of any shortage of staff. Again, one has to know what shortage of staff means. Are you talking about the ad hoc staff we engage as presiding officers, assistant presiding officers, supervisory presiding officers, collation officers, returning officers, or you are talking about our own regular staff? In all categories, there is not any reported shortfall. In fact, in some states, we are inundated by numbers. And we have had complaints of so many people who are not officially invited by the commission, but eager to participate in the elections and make themselves available. We have a system of carefully vetting the numbers and vetting the persons so engaged. And also, we have a system of identifying the sources from which we draw our various categories of ad hoc officials. The beautiful thing about Nigeria is that capacity is not our problem. I hope Lamid Lige is here, one of our colleagues from the Republic of Liberia. Before their general elections, this is a story I like to share. Before their general elections, we visited the Electoral Commission. And they were busy thinking about how to source staff, ad hoc staff for the elections. They went down to the level of school teachers, secondary school students, and what have you. And I noticed that one of the commissioners kept laughing all through the discussion. We didn't participate in the discussion. At the end of the discussion, that commissioner approached me and said, "You must have been laughing at what we were doing." I said, "But why?" He said, "You know, capacity is not your problem in Nigeria." He said, "The number of unemployed graduates is more than the entire voter population in the Republic of Liberia. So there is no way INEC can suffer from shortfall of staff." So the commission is unaware that we have any shortfall of staff for any of the categories I described. Voice of Nigeria, trending reports on the social media of hacking by the commission. I think I responded to this question yesterday. Much of our operations are offline. And you can hack something that is offline. There hasn't been a single incident reported of an attempted hacking of our systems. But that is not to say that we are complacent. We are not. We will never be complacent. We tested, retested our processes. We even ethically hacked our systems just to prove the strength of our security system. It is not to the knowledge of the Commission that there has been any incidents with our particularly IT facilities. Ijeoma AIT, request for redeployment of RECs. Are we thinking of redeploying RECs 2 days to the election? The RECs are in place. And you mentioned specifically the REC for one of the South 1,000 states. We spoke this afternoon. He is still the rec, and that is the situation. The court, again, Ijoma ruled that a nominated candidate is no longer the candidate. That is no problem for the commission. We'll always obey court orders. If, for instance, the court ruled that a particular person is not the candidate on the eve of elections, that is not to say that the party should not be on the ballot. We'll be more concerned, for instance, if a particular party is omitted or the logo of that party is omitted from the ballot, because under the Electoral Act, that amounts to a lawful exclusion. And the implication of that is that the election conducted as a result will be nullified by the courts. But if it's about candidature and a question of who the right candidate is, but the logo is on the ballot, this matter can be sorted out even after the elections. It's a pre-election matter that can go up to the Supreme Court. So we conduct elections if, for instance, a candidate or a particular party whose candidate has been disqualified by court order, wins an election, then we see what happens thereafter. Usually if people go to court to seek for the disqualification of a nominated candidate, they put themselves forward. That rather than the nominated candidate, they should have been candidates. And the courts will now rule accordingly to say Mr. X is not the candidate, it's Mr. Y. So once the election is conducted, we'll issue the certificate of return to Mr. Y by court order. So any court order that says that a particular candidate is disqualified will go ahead and conduct the election with the party on the ballot. The issue of candidature will be determined after the elections. After the 2015 general elections, the Commission had cause to issue certificates of return to 23 candidates who approached the courts after the elections to say that they were the rightful winners of the 2015 general elections and not the candidates earlier declared by the Commission. So we had 23 cases in which petitioners were declared winners and the election upturned in favor of the petitioners. And the Commission had no problem signing the certificates of return in obedience to court orders. Bala, any person found guilty of double registration, well, we conducted the cleaning up of the voters register. Remember, the law requires that we should display for a period of 5 to 7 days for claims and objections nationwide, and we did so in November, precisely between the 16th and the 21st of November last year, in all the 119,973 polling units. The whole idea is for citizens to help the Commission to clean up the voters register. And we received several contributions and observations by citizens. And we used the information to further clean up the voters register. Now, I'm unaware that there is any double registrant on the register, but it's a register of 84 million entries. Continue to play your role as citizens. If you see any person registered twice, please draw our attention. One, there will be legal consequences. Double registration is an offense under the law. And secondly, I assure you, we'll promptly null the names from the register. And also, let me appeal to political parties. We have made copies of the entire national register of voters to each of the 91 political parties in the country. The idea is for parties to also help us go through the register. If there are ineligible persons, they can then help the Commission to further clean up the register. Raising of marked ballot papers. Voters are not supposed to expose their marked ballot papers to others. Once you make your choice in the voting cubicle, the most sensible thing to do is to drop the marked ballot into the ballot box. And that is why the Commission has provided the voting cubicles to guarantee the secrecy of the ballot and the secrecy of choice. Remember also in 2019, we said we are going to introduce the system of rolling up of the ballot papers and flattening the the ballot papers. This is in order to address, first and foremost, the issue of vote buying. But there is also an added advantage. The added advantage is that the ballot papers will not be exposed. But I would like to appeal to all citizens, when you vote, please don't expose your marked ballot papers. Any plan to postpone elections in 3 states? I must say that I read this story online. There is an attempt to postpone elections in 3 states. And I was very happy that in one of the 3 states mentioned, they started moving to the local government areas yesterday. And by 9 p.m., the resident electoral commissioner for that state called me to say that they have achieved 100% deployment to the local governments. But it's one of the 3 states mentioned. Others mentioned have also deployed to the local governments, and tomorrow they will deploy to the wards. I'm sure this is the best answer to the allegation that election will be postponed in any of the 3 states who have already deployed. Ajijola, long-term strategy for reducing the figures of uncollected PVCs. This is a very good question, even though at the moment the attention of the Commission is focused on delivering the elections on Saturday, February 23rd, and Saturday, March 9th. But this is one of the discussions that the Commission has to have with citizens after the 2015 general elections on the number of PVCs uncollected. I have given you the breakdown of the statistics, and I said out of the 12 million, 11 million uncollected cards, over 7 million are from the registrations undertaken between 2014 and 2016, and only 3 million out of the 14 million new registrants in 2017 and 2018. I guess the longer it takes after registration, the more difficult it is to collect those cards. But these are not the discussions that we need to hold at the moment. These are discussions that will come to big time in full consultation with the stakeholders. You talked about the failure of the smart card readers and what to do. This is a follow-up to the question you asked yesterday. My additional clarification will be that if the card reader completely fails and then the Commission conducts the election the following day, we'll have results for that particular polling unit, so voters will not be disenfranchised. I actually responded to your question on the assumption that you were talking about the provisions of Section 53 of the Electoral Act, which provides for the suspension of elections in the event of overvoting in a polling unit. And the law says that where the total number of registered voters won't make a difference to the outcome of the election, the Commission should go ahead and make a declaration. But the standing policy of the Commission is that where the card reader totally fails, then the election will be held the following day, if there is no replacement smart card reader made available immediately. Funding on time, what do we do? This is also one of the issues that we need to discuss after the elections. While in more mature democracies, the cost is reducing of conducting elections because of trust, in our own case, the cost is spiraling. Because you have to take so many measures, so many steps, particularly because as we are making efforts to improve on the process, others are also thinking about how to beat the system. So this cat and mouse between the Commission and particularly some partisan actors is ongoing, and it means additional cost. But this is a discussion that we can hold after the general election. 2 days to the next election, let us focus on the election. But I appreciate the centrality of the question that you have asked to the future of our democracy. Then somebody asked about the possibility of foreign intervention, and if the Commission is afraid or worried. Well, I'm not aware that there is any attempt for foreign intervention or invasion of INEC. And that is what I'm responsible for. and so unfortunately I cannot respond to that kind of hypothetical situation. 13 INEC vehicles were burnt down in Obot Akara. The Commission is unaware that any of our vehicles were burnt down. What happens was that 11 vehicles were reported to have been burnt down. Among the vehicles that we engage the road transport unions to provide for the movement of staff and materials to the polling units on election day. I scheduled a meeting this afternoon but couldn't hold between us and the president of the National Union of Road Transport Workers. We heard about what happened. It's unfortunate. It's not a good development for our democracy, but these are not INEC operational vehicles, vehicles owned by the Commission. They are vehicles that we have hired for the purpose of moving personnel and materials. But we are going to meet with the president of the National Union of Road Transport Workers, and we have already made a case to the security agencies for greater protection of these assets. Citizens help the process of conducting elections. These buses are their means of livelihood. Somebody relies on just that bus to take care of himself and his family, and nobody should lose his means of livelihood on account of helping the process of our democracy. We have made a report to the security agencies, and I'm sure they have started investigation. Austin CDD, finally you talked about section 29.3 of the Electoral Act that talks about the deployment of security forces by the Commission in consultation with the security agencies. Yes, the operative term is consultation. And we keep consulting with the security agencies through the instrumentality of the Interagency Consultative Committee on Election Security. What is very interesting about the 2019 general elections in relation to security deployment is that for the first time, security is deployed by name and telephone numbers. Already in Lagos, this information has been made available to our resident electoral commissioners. And the IGP has assured us that this information will be made available to all electoral commissioners nationwide, so that you know in each polling unit who has been deployed by name and telephone numbers. In that way, you can hold people responsible for their actions or inactions in polling units. I hope I've responded to all the questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairman. And with that response, we have come to the end of this briefing. On behalf of the Commission, we once again like to thank all our partners, our friends, the media, fellow election management bodies, the observers, and everyone who has turned up here this afternoon. Thank you, and as usual, we'll see you tomorrow, same time, same venue. Thank you very much.